We're looking at another example of a 3x3 method of row reduction to solve a system of equations. My first step always is to get the bottom left entry to equal 0. Well, I can do that really easily when I already have a 0 in that first column somewhere. So I can just flip-flop these two rows, put this 0, 5, 2, 1 in the bottom row, bring the 2, 1, 1, 5 into the middle row, and leave my top row the exact same. That's a good way to get myself started to get that 0 in the bottom left corner. Now from there I need to work myself up. I need to somehow turn this 2 into a 0. Well, I need to eliminate it with something above. Now normally I would just go and say, well, I'd multiply this top row by a negative 2. That way I'd have negative 2 and positive 2 to cancel each other out. I'd write that in a whole new matrix and then do that next step. Just so you can see a way that you can kind of reduce some writing time and some space. Instead of writing out the whole new matrix, let me just write out what that new row would be, small, maybe in a different color up here, if I multiplied that entire row by negative 2. It would be negative 2, positive 6, this would become a negative 4, and this would become a negative 40. I would highly recommend if you do this, maybe different colors or just somehow to kind of notice what's going on and keep yourself organized. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to take row 2, add it with this new row 1 that I did in blue, and plug it into row 2 because that's what I want to have eliminated. So when I do that, my top row stays the exact same from the beginning. My bottom row stays the exact same. My middle row is now the sum, row 2 plus that new blue row 1. So 2 and negative 2 is 0, 1 and 6 is 7, 1 and negative 4 is negative 3, and 5 and negative 40 should give me a negative 35. It would help if I had written down my matrix right from the beginning. That should have been negative 5, which makes this, when I add those guys up, not a negative 35, but instead a negative 45. My apologies on that. Again, signs are very important. Make sure we don't get those messed up. Okay, from there, I need to now make this 5 into a 0, okay, because it's everything that's below the diagonal needs to now become a 0. To do that, I need to turn this 5 somehow into a 7 maybe, or the 7 into a 5. Well, I really can't do that either way, so I'm going to have to do some multiplication here. I'll multiply row 2 by 7, and I'll make row 3 by negative 7. I'm sorry, row 2 should be by positive 5. That way I'll get a least common multiple in those two rows of 35. So the top row is still the same. My middle row now will be 0, 35, negative 15, and this should become a, when I do negative 45 times, times 5 should give me a negative 225. And then in the bottom row, 0, 35, 14, and 7. I multiplied that by negative though, so all those should be negative. So now I can eliminate that bottom negative 35 by plugging in the row 3 when I add row 2 and row 3. So the first two rows again stay the same. 0, 35, negative 15, negative 225. And my bottom row now will be 0, 0. This will be negative 29, and this will be negative 332. The numbers look big. Don't worry about it. Okay? It's going to be just fine, except I can't do basic addition. That should be negative 232. Okay? From here, I can't get 29 to turn into 15 or anything like that, so I'm going to do some simplifying right now. I'm going to take row 3 and divide it by that negative 29 to see what divides out. I'm also going to, just to make my life easier, divide that row 2 back by the 5 that I multiplied by earlier, just to get some easier numbers to look at. So my first row still looks the same. My second row now will be 0, 7, negative 3, and a negative 45, like we have right here. My bottom row now will be 0, 0, 1, and 8 in my augmented column. Okay, so now I should be in good shape because once I'm in row echelon form, my steps are pretty simple. First, I'm going to multiply this row by 3. That way I can eliminate this negative 3, which I need to eliminate next. So this will become a 3, this will become a 24. So I'm going to take row 2, add it with that new row 3 I just made. Mark that in blue real quick. And then I'm going to plug that into row 2, because that's where I had excuse me, that's where I had my circled spot that I'm changing. So again, I still have not touched row 1, which is good. I shouldn't touch it till the very end. 0, 7, 0, and this should be a negative 21, and then 0, 0, 1, and 8, like before. Okay, my last, or next to last step, I now need to get the 2 into a 0. To do that, I need to make this a negative 2. I do that by multiplying by negative 2, so this is negative 16. So now I'm going to do row 1 plus that new row 3 and plug it into row 1 because that's where I want to have something eliminated. So 1, negative 3, 0, and when I add those together, I will have 4. My middle and bottom rows stay the exact same. So negative 21 and 8 for those. All right, and then my penultimate step, I need to now somehow eliminate these two guys. Well, something you may have noticed earlier that I didn't even do, I could have done it all the way back here. I could have divided that row, that second row, by 7. I can do that at any point. If you can see that, I would highly suggest doing it. Because now what I can do is I can multiply this row by 3, which would give me 3 and negative 9. So I even write that, back that up a little bit. I'll write that here in white. I can make this middle row into a 3 and or it'd be a negative 3 and a positive 9. Or negative 9, because I do want positive 3 then. Okay? Because what I'm going to have, I'll even write that step out just to make sure we're good. If I do row 2 times 2, I would have 1, negative 3, 0, 4. I'll have 0, 3, 0, and negative 9. Yes, negative 9. And then 0, 0, 1, 8. Because now I can combine these two guys, row 1 plus row 2, plug it into row 2. So I'd have 1, 0, 0, and that'll become negative 5. My bottom row stayed the same, 0, 0, 1, 8. My middle row would stay the same. Let me divide it back by 3 just so I can. 0, 1, 0, and negative 3. That way I have my answer. X equals negative 5, Y equals negative 3, and Z equals 8. So again, it seems like a lot of steps, but it ends up being a nice, simple, and easier way to solve than by going through all your processes back in the elimination substitution methods of Algebra 2.